Hi everybody, Alan here. I'm here to talk to you today about iterating with hardware and the Manna drone delivery story. And just to let you know what we're doing, what we've done, and what we hope to do in the future. So our mission at Manna is to improve the world by making lightning fast suburban deliveries affordable, green, and safe. And we do that by essentially magical 3-minute deliveries from the sky using our drone technology platform. A lot of people ask us why we got into the business, and the why is very simple. Current last mile delivery is just very unsustainable and very, very expensive. It's costing up to $10 per delivery. That's mainly due then to labor costs, running costs, and just pure operational costs of road-based delivery. It also suffers from quality problems. I mean, to make the unit economics of last mile delivery even somewhat attractive for road-based delivery, orders have to be aggregated together. So it's very common for a delivery driver to have to take 5 or even 12 deliveries at a time from a restaurant, for example, and deliver those to the houses. And that leads to very erratic quality. So what can happen is, I mean, it's great if you're the last order into the car and the first order out, fantastic. You've got nice hot food. But if you're at the other end of that scale, the quality of the food is going to suffer. The third reason that we're doing this is the negative societal impacts. Current road-based delivery is very unsustainable for the environment. It's obviously causes a lot of traffic on the roads, and it's just not a very efficient way of getting small goods around for delivery. So with all of those reasons in mind, Manna was born, and we were really born to transform the last mile delivery. And we can do that because we can operate at a very low cost, mainly through automation. Really high quality product. We're delivering one product at a time. We can get you that product there in roughly 2 minutes, 40 seconds. So we really have that highly consistent quality. And again, positive societal impacts. Zero emissions, fully electric. The vehicles are safe and autonomous. You don't even hear them. They're 50, 60 meters in the sky, removing traffic from the roads. So all around, it's a positive experience for everybody. And just to tell you a little bit about the process and how it actually works. So everybody's used to their traditional aggregator apps. So customer goes online onto their app, they place their order as normal. The vendor, the merchant, prepares the order as normal. And the only difference is, instead of the food or the payload delivery being loaded into traditional road-based delivery, it's loaded into an aircraft. And that aircraft will then autonomously fly to your location, taking no stops on the way, and does that at about 50, 60 meters. When it gets to the delivery zone, it drops down to about 15 meters, where doors open and the payload slowly drops to the ground. And then the craft returns home for another delivery. So very fast, very efficient, and again, very clean and safe. So just to tell you a little bit about our platform. So to enable the business, we've had to build a drone, a bit of physical hardware. And the reason we had to do that was that consumer grade off the shelf drones just aren't sufficient in terms of levels of reliability. So what we've done is we engineered an aircraft from the ground up to be highly reliable and to be basically a workhorse. So we fly our aircrafts up to 12 hours a day, doing constant deliveries. And to do that safely requires a lot of engineering effort, and a lot of time has gone into both the hardware and the software to enable that system to be highly reliable. So as you can see here, there's kind of a front view of the aircraft, and it's got multiple motors on each arm. And that means that, again, we've got redundancy on each arm. Internally in the craft, we've got multiple batteries. And then we also have a triple redundant flight control system. And that's really at the core of what makes our technology very safe to operate. So we've got 3 independent suites of flight sensors, and they're constantly voting between each other to ensure that the aircraft is making the right decisions and is, again, flying safely. The body of the aircraft is designed for lift to, again, allow us to deliver the payload quickly, safely, and efficiently. Our typical cruise speed is about 85 kilometers an hour, and we fly as the crow flies. And I'll take you through the journey as to how we got there in a few slides. We're 90% cheaper versus car delivery, and that's mainly down to automation. Again, we can automate a lot of what happens in the delivery process, which again increases the consistent quality of what we can do. And we're designed in a certified environment. Again, we'll talk about that a little bit later on, and fault tolerant. So the Manna journey. I mean, so we've been doing this for about three and a half years. Really interesting space to get into. It's very much the beginning of an industry as we see it. There's very few companies in the world that are actually operating a drone delivery business, and certainly very few that are doing it successfully. We're based here in Ireland, which again is a great place to be doing this. We've got lovely weather for aircraft testing, which kind of gives us a little bit of an advantage. As you can see here, we've got some different dots here. So this is just to explain the story that we have now. So we actually started our journey in Moneygall. I'll talk about that in a second. We then went on to Oranmore in Galway, and we're currently live in operations in Dublin in Balbriggan, just near Dublin Airport. We also, the orange dot here, we have a test facility down in Offaly where we're flying 500-600 flights a day. We manufacture down there, and we do all of our commissioning, safety testing, parachute testing, everything down on site in Offaly. So Moneygall, I suppose, where it all began for us, it was an interesting time. It was back in 2020 when the world was going through some changes. And actually we were, as a company, we're based in the Innovation Centre in UCD in Dublin. And our initial trial was actually to go from one side of UCD to the other. So reasonably short, point to point, A to B trial, relatively simple. And again, everything in aviation is crawl, walk, run. So you start simple and you build up confidence on all levels. So that was what we intended to do. We intended to go live in March 2020. And then obviously the world changed. So the campus in UCD closed down, so there was no students to deliver to. So we had to put that operation on pause. But a few weeks later, we actually got a call from the HSE to see if they could use our technology to help individuals cocooning in different parts of the country. So we jumped at the chance. It was a great opportunity for us, and we actually ended up going to Moneygall, and we based our drones actually where the Barack Obama Plaza is. And what you can see here on the right is orange lines, and each orange line represents a delivery flight. And these are real deliveries, customers ordering real things, us delivering prescription medication to people cocooning. Really interesting journey for us. And we had gone from doing a point to point, an A to B operation, to a few weeks later going into actually people's gardens and delivering at the gardens. And that provided a lot of technical challenges. How exactly do we know where the pin is? Are we dropping in the right location? And a lot of operational challenges. At that stage, we didn't even have a website or a mobile app. We were actually taking orders by phone. But it worked, and we made it work. There was 1,000 people there that were very happy with the service, about 300 homes. And again, really interesting. What you can see here is our base is here at the kind of center of the orange. And the routes kind of follow what we call highways. And you can see that they're going over mostly green areas. And this is down to the safety case. Obviously, we're flying an aircraft 50 meters in the sky. So safety is a paramount concern. And again, we're crawling in this phase. So we're de-risking by flying over very sparse locations and then only coming in at the end overpopulated locations when we're actually doing the delivery. So again, so Moneygall was very successful for us. We were there for 6, maybe 8 months. Really positive, and it really showed us that there's a genuine need for this technology and a want for this technology. After Moneygall, we progressed to Galway into a town in Oranmore, bigger town. Again, lots more to learn operationally, and also slightly different weather. We're on the coast, windier, and so really some interesting challenges there. That's a town of 10,000 people, about 3,000 homes. And again, you can see we're based here in the center, and we've got these highways that kind of go down. So the big difference in Oranmore versus Moneygall, apart from the population density, was that we actually onboarded a load of new vendors. So Tesco's was one of our kind of flagship vendors that we started working with there, and we were actually operating the drones off the roof of a Tesco's, of the Tesco's down in Oranmore. Which again, challenging environment, quite a small location where we were landing and taking off drones. And that required a good bit of work to ensure that we could do that. Again, everything comes down to safety. But interesting, we when we were down in Oranmore, that's actually when we developed our first web presence. So we had a mobile web and a mobile optimized page where people could actually make deliveries and order. And they were, full customers ordering. And what we discovered in Oranmore is that coffee is our number one product. And nobody thought that they could get coffee delivered. And we can deliver the coffee with the cafe art, as people call it, on top, and with the foam still intact and everything like that. And we can get that to people in under 3 minutes. So again, very, very compelling option for people. This is just a zoomed in view, so you can kind of see the density of the area that we were working in. And again, each one of these orange dots is a real delivery. We were in Oranmore for about a year and a half. And now, so we actually, when we were in Oranmore, we ran a lot of feedback for customers. And one of the things we get asked a lot is, do people actually like this, or do they mind drones flying over them and whatnot? So of the survey we did, 98% of people were hugely positive. Particularly during COVID, I think people were looking to get things delivered, and it was a great time to kind of launch into full scale operations. But it's amazing how normal it becomes in a town. And actually it was very hard to leave both Moneygall and Oranmore. But it's important for us as a business that we move on and we face the operational challenges of bigger locations. But again, feedback from customers hugely positive, and that continues today where we are in Balbriggan. So Balbriggan's our latest town. We've been there since January 2022. We've done upwards of 5,000 deliveries, nearly blown 10,000 kilometers to make those deliveries. And again, all of that is green, safe, autonomous flight. Each one of these green lines is a delivery, and each one of these dots is the density of those deliveries. And what you'll notice here versus the other towns, versus Oranmore and Moneygall, is that we're flying much more as the crow flies. And again, this is because we've now put 120,000 delivery flights on the clock on the technology, and we're building confidence along with the Irish regulator who's building confidence. We still don't go exactly as the crow flies because we are very conscious of the ground risk. So areas that we know will be highly populated, such as schools or other congregations, we actually avoid those using a mapping system that we've built to enable our aircraft to deconflict each other in the sky. And what that means is that we can fly multiple aircraft at a time and ensure that they don't collide or get in each other's way. So as I said, we're live in Balbriggan. We fly a weight of 2 kilograms, and we fly that into a 2 kilometer radius, about 35,000 people, nearly 10,000 homes. We're doing that week in, week out since January, every day, Wednesday to Sunday, 8 in the morning till 9 at night. Really, really popular. We've got the likes of Subway, Tesco's, coffee, obviously, our number one, Coca-Cola, Ben and Jerry's. And then we've got different hot food vendors in the evening for pizza and noodles, Chinese takeaways, different things like that. So what I'm going to do now is just show you a quick video. So here we have our live operation in Balbriggan. This is actually filmed on one of the early months in Balbriggan when we first arrived. You can see our aircraft there on the pad. So that day we were flying 2 aircraft. And again, you can see you've got an operator down here and they've got control. So for regulation at the moment, we need to have visual line of sight of the aircraft, which is why we work within a 2 kilometer radius. Those pilots have controls that can interface with the drone, should they need to. But in a typical operation, they don't interface with the drone at all. A mission is loaded onto the drone automatically, and the drone takes off as it's doing now. Prior to takeoff, you would have seen another operator come out and actually load the drone, which is actually just putting the coffee or payload into the aircraft. So the aircraft is taken off. It's flying at 50 meters, about 85 kilometers an hour. And you see it'll come in now into shot. I think it's up here. And then what you can see is here, this is again in the early days of Balbriggan, and there's quite a bit of fanfare. And it's amazing, after about 3 weeks, all of that dies down and this just becomes normal. And people don't even look up. You can see the aircraft coming in here. So what it's doing is it's coming in above the drop zone, and it'll come down to about 15 meters. And then you'll see the doors under the aircraft open, and the payload will come down slowly on a thread. So keep an eye on the doors here. And there it goes. So that was actually a cup of coffee and I think a Danish pastry. Okay. And that's it. No involvement from any users. The craft doesn't land for obvious reasons. Makes its delivery, doors closed, it goes back up, returns to base, and is ready to go again. So again, very simple process on the face of it, and a very compelling product for the customers. So that was a live delivery, and again, we're doing that every day in Balbriggan, Wednesday to Sunday. Just some fun facts about Balbriggan and about the operation so far. We've delivered 500 litres of coffee. We've delivered to 1 in 6 homes. It's now 1 in 4 homes. 115,000 flights again. That's gone up since these flights were on. 120,000 flights we're on now. Our fastest ever delivery was 60 seconds. That was somebody who lived very close. We're 8 times more efficient, and really, really strong customer satisfaction scores. I mean, we are already seeing this in Balbriggan and the other towns as to how this is changing behaviour. I mean, who would have ever ordered a coffee before this technology, because the quality wouldn't be there. We're seeing people order, I think that the oddest order we've had is nappy cream and a head of broccoli at 8 o'clock at night. So, I mean, people are really using this for emergency items, last minute items. And it's great to hear that and see the different use cases that come in for the technology. Just in terms of the delivery flow, I suppose just to explain exactly how it happens and typical timings. So an order gets created and it moves through different statuses. So accepted, and then the store accepts it. So we've had to build technology at each of these points. So our vendors have apps and devices to accept orders and manage the order. Our controllers have devices again to manage the order and figure out where it is. And we've also then had to build a customer experience. So in Balbriggan, we launched with a dedicated mobile app. So we're now app only. And that's great because we can give the customer feedback on the order to exactly as to where it is. Very much like you'd get from your traditional aggregator app, and your order is now being prepared in the kitchen, and it's being received and it's ready. And the difference in our app, instead of seeing a driver on the road, you actually see the aircraft flying, and it doesn't get stuck in traffic, which is very, very useful. This is also very useful from an analytical point of view, because we're now able to feed this data back into our vendors to let them know where potential slowdowns or optimizations or capacity planning can happen in their own chain, which is very, very insightful for them. So to round up, I mean, very exciting journey we're on. We think we're only at the beginning of it. We've got our location now in Dublin with 35,000 people. We're looking to expand that to 1 or 2 sites across Europe. and also into the US next year. I mean, one of the contexts that we have to work in is regulation, and that's believe it or not a really interesting angle on what we're doing. And obviously, we're flying objects in the sky, it's a heavily regulated space. And up to about 2 years ago, the only regulation in place was that of manned aviation, and that you would get on your typical commercial airline craft, which is a huge burden to go through. Europe and the FAA in the US have actually are working on slightly different pages at the moment, but they're both actively trying to get and succeeding in getting unmanned aircraft certification programs in place. So Europe is a little bit ahead. And what those programs mean is that we will be able to expand our operation at a more cost-friendly approach. So, we expect a lot of news to happen in 2023. Things that will happen is that we'll be able to reduce our reliance on operators, where it's a 1-to-1 ratio, and we can move to a higher ratio of drones to operator. And again, all of that leads into autonomy and bringing the cost down per delivery. So very exciting times ahead. We're going to be around UXDX for the duration. So please come by, stop by. We'll have an aircraft on site that you can have a look at. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. I really enjoyed that. I thought that was really interesting, different challenges that people have to face when also iterating with the hardware side of things as well as the software.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, and I mean, we never first. I mean, it's kind of it feels funny to say it now. I mean, we envision ourselves as a software business. It's software is the major problem here. The craft is brilliant and it's so exciting to build, and it's really interesting. But it's a means to an end. A lot of the thinking is going into the software, the logistics platform, and how do we tell the aircraft where to go? I mean, it's reasonably straightforward. I have to say that very carefully, because some of my team don't lynch me, but it's reasonably straightforward to get something to fly. What's very difficult is to get something to fly reliably, and that's what we've been doing over the last few years. It's even more difficult to get multiple of those things flying reliably together, and that's where the big software piece comes in.
Yeah, so I might actually jump straight to that point, because you mentioned it there, the reliability and the multiple in the sky. So I can see it as a challenge, and I'm not going to downplay it, that if you've got multiple of your own drones in the sky, it's hard to make sure that they don't crash into each other, but you could probably have some communication. But what happens when, because Google have Wing and Amazon are doing their deliveries, and you've got those guys in the sky, and then maybe some hobby drones or helicopters or other items in the sky. So how do you make sure that you're keeping it safe, not just from your own drones, but from everything else?
Yeah, great question. And it's one of the biggest challenges. It's actually probably the biggest challenge in the drone space at the moment. If you assume that the hardware is a given and we can make that reliable. So it's that airspace coordination. And that's probably the number one reason why we're not seeing a lot of drones in the sky, or the number of drones that we should be seeing in the sky at the moment. And so they call that problem UTM, which is unmanned system traffic management. And it's sort of the equivalent of air traffic control problem. So, I mean, everybody's familiar with air traffic control. So above 500 feet, everything is very much controlled by air traffic controllers in each jurisdiction. And, we think there's a lot of aircraft in the sky in terms of commercial aviation. In reality, what's going to be coming with UAVs or drones, unmanned aircraft, there's not. So everybody realizes that what the manual effort that air traffic controllers have to do now just isn't feasible for unmanned aircraft. So they're trying to solve this problem, which is UTM. There's a lot of companies at the moment now spinning up to solve that problem. But really, regulators are pushing for that to be solved in a federated way. So actually, it turns out like we end up working with a lot of what people might call our competitors, but we actually all work together to try and solve that problem, because we all want the skies to be open. That's the overriding goal here, is that we want the skies to be open for business, and working together will enable that. So in some ways we don't compete with each other. We're all competing for the same prize to get the skies open. And the way we do that is through working groups. There's a great standard out published last year, an ASTM standard, which actually describes how that interoperability can work. So we can tell the likes of Google Wing where our aircraft are, and they can tell us where their aircraft is. And you can do that in a federated way. I mean, it would be quite easy for to just implement a kind of a one system, and somebody owns the airspace in a particular country. But nobody wants that. Nobody wants a monopoly. Everybody wants to do it in a federated, fair way. And it's how do you make the sky fair? So if we're doing a delivery, and Google Wing are doing a delivery, who has right of way? Who has preference? And then if an air ambulance comes through, obviously that has preference. So all of these things are being figured out and worked out. There's, as of last year, there's a specification in place that people are working towards, including ourselves, that will allow us to actually do combined operations with other drone companies. And they could be survey companies, they could be delivery companies. There's so many use cases for this technology, but it all boils down to that same problem of how do you coordinate and interact with each other? And it's a really, really interesting space. It's kind of coming to life now. And I think there'll be some big announcements. There's been a lot of trials around Europe, and there's a new initiative called USpace, which is a kind of a designated set of rules that you can put into an airspace. And it's all with the achievement to get an ultimate UTM solution. So there's been a lot of those trials around Europe. There's, I think, a trial happening in Ireland over the next 2 years on that technology as well. So all of that stuff is coming.
Great. That sounds like really promising. And but when I was listening to that, I was thinking that relies on, I guess, smart things in the sky. And I'm thinking there's probably a lot of dumb things in the sky. And what I mean by that is, if I'm just manually operating my drone, because that's manually operating, I don't know, I won't have this kind of communication that something else is there. Or like just animals, there's birds in the sky, they're not going to be telling your drones where they are and things like that. So how do you make sure that you're not going to crash with, I guess, kind of animals like birds, but also the hobby drone?
Yeah, absolutely. And that all feeds into the UTM problems. So there's two ways to look at it. So what they're just about to start enforcing a rule that they've had for about 2 years in the US, the FAA, are called remote ID. And remote ID is a set of technologies that broadcasts the location of a UAV. And it does that over long wave Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or even the LTE network. And that was supposed to go into force in September of this year. It's now December 16th. And they're giving people, so every drone now in the US has to have one of these remote ID devices. And essentially they call it a license plate for the drone. And what you can do is you can get an app on your phone, and you can hold your phone to the sky, point it at the drone, and it'll tell you on your phone who's the location of the pilot or the system controlling it, and the location of the drone, and who owns it and who to contact if there's a problem. So that's the first kind of big step around kind of understanding what's in the air. And that's great, and that's super. And if you were guaranteed that 100% of everything in the sky would have a remote ID on it, you wouldn't need any other complex solutions. But the reality is, you know, how do you enforce that? How do you ensure that a drone doesn't take off without this remote ID, or a bird, or some other creature in the sky? And so that's where you get into. So there's what they call strategic deconfliction, which is basically you take a snapshot of the sky at the point in time just before takeoff, and you plan your route based on strategic things like, I know this is going to be here at this time, so we can go here, and etc. And then there's the tactical deconfliction problem, which is I'm in the sky and something's going to happen that we don't know. And that could be somebody has got a drone for Christmas, and they throw it into the sky, not realizing that, you know, there's consequences. And then you're down to what sensors do you have on board? So, you know, we would have multiple sensors on board our aircraft, from vision, LiDAR, radar, to detect these things. And unfortunately, there's not one silver bullet technology that can actually do that yet. And there's, again, a lot of companies working on this detect and avoid problem. But there's pros and cons with all of the technology. So like LiDAR doesn't work great in rain. Vision doesn't work great at night. radar tends to be pretty heavy, which isn't great for an aircraft. So there's all of these now trade-offs being made. But again, there's lots of things happening in that space. We've done a lot of work with AI this year around computer vision, particularly around figuring out landing zones. But that technology can be augmented to detect things forward-facing in the sky. So there's lots of interesting things happening. But again, there's certainly in Europe now, there's regulations in place. So there's kind of like a rule book laid out in Europe now that, if you follow that rule book, you can fly, beyond visual line of sight and with multiple operators to multiple drones. So what we were missing about 3 years ago as an industry was that rule book. We now have that rule book. The previous rule book was a manned aviation. We now have a specific UAV rule book, which will allow us to set realistic timelines for when things will happen. And we believe 2023 is going to be a huge year.
Great. Yeah, so I wanted to actually jump in on that because at the very start of your talk, you said that the economics doesn't work for kind of most deliveries. And I think you threw out the figure of $10 is the average kind of cost of a delivery. And a lot of that was down to labor. But you then said that you need somebody there looking at the line of sight for everything. So where are you at with your economics, and where do you, obviously it's a new industry, so I'm assuming you're on a downward trend, but where do you think you can get to with that?
Yeah, no, again, another good question. I mean, we believe we can get the cost per delivery down to $1 from the current $10. So if people pay, people pay, let's say $5 for a delivery now, the other $5 of that $10 is being eaten by the restaurant or the vendor or whoever's sending the goods. So last mile delivery now is loss making. And you hope that you can recoup that based on the product you're delivering. Our unit economics at the moment, are certainly not positive. And they won't be positive until we can fully automate our solution. Now, we know, and we have all of the technology done to automate our system. So in our test site, for example, we fly multiple drones to a single pilot. But that technology can't be rolled out in a live environment because there's no regulation to allow that yet. But within Europe, so Manna could take what we're doing in Europe. We've been awarded a license, an LUC, a light unmanned aircraft certificate. So we can technically do what we're doing anywhere in Europe. But it wouldn't be beneficial to Manna because of the current unit economics. So what we need to do is we need to go through the regulation framework that's been laid out, which we're in the middle of. And once we have that done, we can start then optimizing our operation for full autonomy. So we've got a very clear path as to how we drive those unit economics to where we want them to be. And once that happens, that's when we can scale. And that's the reason that we don't stay in it. We haven't to date stayed in a town because it's all about learning and then pushing us on to the next milestone. Now Balbriggan is a great case. I mean, 35,000 people. It's the second most densely populated town in Ireland. So, I mean, it's a great location for us now and probably long term.
Awesome. And just one on the density, actually, because I've heard people kind of flying the hobby drones around. They can be quite loud. Is that an issue that you have with noise of your drones in a densely populated area?
It's not. So noise is probably the biggest question we get. And what happens is the first time people see our aircraft, they say, bigger than I thought. And we're like, yeah. And then the second thing, and then we explain it has to be this size because we're fitting pizzas and, big. And the second thing they say is it's quieter than I thought. So everybody has a really, really negative connotation with drones because the little small drones are incredibly loud and annoying. And it's just not a pleasant sound. In the picture you would have seen in the picture behind me, the propellers on our drone are quite substantial. They're 28 inches. So what that means is actually they're very quiet. So typically the bigger the prop, the quieter the drone. We're also flying at 60 meters. So you can't hear us. When we get 60 meters, you can't hear us. So you hear when we come down to deliver, there's noise, but that noise is no more than traffic noise, which you would get from a normal road-based delivery. So it's a very hard one to demonstrate because video and microphones on phones and cameras don't do it justice. But it's the second thing that people say about the drone is, and we have people visiting us all of the time from different drone businesses and around the industry, and it's the one comment that we consistently get is, how did you make the drone so quiet?
Awesome. I have one last question. 2 kilos. So that's your current limit. Is that it? Or do you see in the future you might have a 10-kilo drone? Or is there a point where it just doesn't make sense? Like, you wouldn't be delivering furniture by drone?
Yeah, no, I think we're a long way off delivering furniture or fridges or ovens or anything like that. So no, I mean, the reason we're 2 kilograms at the moment is we have to keep the drone for regulation reasons below 25 kilos, fully loaded up. So that includes your battery, the airframe, the craft, and everything like that. Our craft could technically carry a lot more than 2 kilograms, but we wouldn't get the 2 kilometer distance in all of the weather conditions that we want to fly in. So your weight that you carry is a trade-off between your performance envelope and what you want to do. Like, most people would only fly their drones in good weather because they're sensible and they're standing there flying their drone. We're lucky in that our drones are autonomous, so they don't really mind the weather, but that introduced a load of design challenges to the aircraft to make it perform. Our future aircraft is going to have a much bigger payload capacity, about 3.5 kilos, and a bigger volume. Volume is actually our challenge. So at the moment, we can fit in about 2.5 shoe boxes kind of volume. And the next aircraft is going to be significantly larger than that. And so that's going to allow us to do more and fly more in different conditions. So at the moment, if somebody orders, let's say, a really large order that's 4 kilograms, we'll actually do that in 2 flights. It's still way more efficient than road-based delivery. And we do that because we want to prove market fit for an extended size. But I think definitely in the future, I mean, the aircraft, as I said before, is an enabler, and not all aircraft suit every situation. So if you're delivering a cup of coffee, you might want a slightly smaller aircraft. If you're delivering 20 cups of coffee, you might want a bigger aircraft. And the future is definitely multi-aircraft. But as a startup, we need to get one craft working, which is kind of middle of the road, and then in the future, like, a lot of the technology that we're building, nearly all of the technology that we're building is transferable across craft. So all of the work that we've done, for example, on the triplex avionics system, like, all of those electronics and software, we just lift that up and we can put it into any airframe we like. And that's hugely important for growth and scale, and as we enter different markets with different needs.